Jesus says, had ye but faith, ye could move mountains. But Ram Dass, who's an old friend of mine, says, if ye had faith, ye would see why the mountains are there in the first place and not move them. What this is speaking to is when you have what in Hinduism is called siddhis, powers, which in this instance could be described as the powers to move mountains, the powers that come about through faith in the divine. When you have these omniscient powers, there comes with that also a responsibility, a maturity, a wisdom. The mountains are where they are because they're where they are. They're not wrong. They're not messing up in where they are. The stars are not a single star is out of place. Not a single star is in the wrong position or would look better in a different position until laid onto it is the desire of the human mind. If you had the ability to move the mountains through faith in the divine, although you could move them, like Ram Dass said, you would see why they're there in the first place and not move them. Because when you have touched into this deeper ability, this deeper universal wisdom, you see why things are the way they are. So you don't interfere, although you have the power and ability to do so. You don't get your hands in on the way things are. This is the perfection of the universe as it is. When we say it's all perfect, or everything is perfect as it is, that doesn't mean everything is awesome. When we say it's all perfect, that doesn't mean suffering is good. When we say it's all perfect, that means that we can see that everything is okay the way it is, because it's all necessary. It's all necessary. And that's easy to say when you're having a good time in life, you know. It's easy for a rich man to say it's all perfect. But how easy is it for a starving child to see into the same thing? Seeing everything as perfect is a very high and very transcendent wisdom. And it's not something you can do with the mind. The mind can say it's all perfect, but in that same breath, not feel that to be the case. The mind can say it's all perfect, but still prefer things to be this way or that way. You know? It's said in the third Chinese patriarch, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. That's the first thing that's said in that text. Think about that for a moment. The great way, the divine way, the wayless way, is not difficult for the one who doesn't want it to be this way or that way. You know? Do you prefer to be happy? Do you prefer to be in a relationship as opposed to not in a relationship? Do you prefer to have money as opposed to being poor? Do you prefer to have food in your stomach as opposed to being hungry? Do you prefer to be free as opposed to being imprisoned? When we say the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences, that's the same way of saying that if you were following the great way, you wouldn't prefer for the mountain to be in a different place. You would see why it's there. You would understand why it's there on a deeper level. You wouldn't need it to move. The neighbor just waved to me. You know, there was a story of a man whose child had died, and he was begging to the Indian saint Sri Ramana Maharshi, please bring my child back to life. Use your godly powers to bring my child back to life. And Ramana Maharshi, who very little spoke, said to the man, you don't even know what you're asking for. You don't even know what you're asking for. In our conditioned, limited cognitive capabilities, we want certain things. We of course want certain things. We want money over poverty. We want food over hunger. We want a relationship over being alone. We want all these things, and we think that in getting those things that we think we want, we would then be happy. But if we were to step out just one layer, just right behind the mind, which getting there is easier said than done, we would see the absolute exquisiteness in things being just the way they are. We would see the necessary functionality in the conditions of our life and the life of everything right now. If we were to touch into, we could say, nature. If we were to touch into nature, we could see the perfection in everything. And it's in that high way of seeing and being that we do, I think, possess the ability to change things in this life, in this world, on a literally magical level. On a literally magical level, we have the ability to change things, to do the impossible. And sometimes we see this come forth, you know? There are thousands and thousands and thousands of stories and reports of Hindu saints and yogis and sadhus doing absolutely what we would call impossible things. Now, that's either a bunch of reports of a mass collective of psychotic people, or they're talking about things that they've seen, witnessed, and experienced, you know? We have the ability to do the impossible. We have the ability to do things that we think can't be done. But the thing is, which is what I've been trying to point to in this video, is that when you're in that space, when you're standing in the space where the impossible and the miraculous can be done by you, you choose not to do it. That's another thing that Ram Dass described, is the yoga of siddhis, of powers, is choosing not to use them, choosing not to act on them. As you advance in the spiritual path, if we want to say that there's something you're advancing down or through or evolving into, you know, there are going to be things that come up which are really, really exciting to the ego mind. It wants to possess it and grab it and use it, whether that be for its own well-being or if it thinks it's being some sort of compassionate bodhisattva and is going to use these powers to heal and save the world. But the art of these powers is to let them pass through you, to not get caught up, you know, to keep going, to let them move through you and continue towards your objective, which we probably all have, I mean, more or less similar, but we probably all have different objectives to some extent. But the idea is to not get caught up anywhere, not get caught up anywhere. If you got to a level where you could move mountains, why are you going to move it? You think it would be better over there? You have preferences? You think the mountain would be better if it were over here as opposed to right here? You know what I mean? The mind is the thing that knows and does and plans and schemes and coordinates and sets up and pursues and achieves and this kind of stuff. The mind is the thing that would feel the inkling to move the mountains if it could. And you could see the moving of the mountains as a metaphor for the fulfilling of your desires, the realizing of your dreams. Had ye but faith, ye could fulfill your desires. But, as I've been saying, when you're standing in the almighty position of wisdom, spiritual wisdom, you see that it's okay the way it is. You see the exquisiteness in the way the dance is unfolding without you needing to do anything about it. The universe is taking care of itself. The universe is doing just fine. And human beings, thinking they're the doer and the knower and the one that needs to make it all happen, we have a great anxiety in thinking that we need to make reality happen. Because if we aren't invested to any extent in making reality happen the way that we think it should, we think it's not going to fulfill itself. But let me just tell you this on a very simple level, like, who's growing this hair? Who's growing this hair? Who's beating this heart? Who is invoking the reflex in every passing moment to breathe in and breathe out? Who's making these eyes see? Who's making the wind blow? Who's making the sun rise and fall? That, I would say, is God, Spirit, the Creator, the wisdom of the universe, the wisdom of nature, of Gaia. And man, humanity, has isolated himself. He has fragmented himself out of the way of nature, the way of God, the way of the cosmos, and thinks he is the doer, thinks he is the one that needs to choose the right thing. Not only choose the right thing, but thinks he has the ability to even choose in the first place. This is the discussion of if there's free will or not. On one level, it's obvious that it's obviously apparent that we have free will. I can choose to wave my hand across the screen. I can choose to make a fist and then choose to unfold it. But as Alan Watts is quoted, you don't know how you do that. You don't know how you do that. There's just this feeling within, and it happens. But see, that feeling within that tells the hand to open and close is the same feeling of the sun's rising and the wind blowing and the plants growing and the breath happening and the heart beating. It's the same. It's completely one. It's one and the same with the natural way of the universe. But in humans, there's this weird, perverted mind stuff that feels like it's separate from the happening of reality itself and thinks that it needs to make things happen, thinks it needs to make the right choice. I've heard it said that you can't know wisdom. Know is a part of knowledge. You can only know knowledge. You can only know information. Wisdom can't be known. It can only be beed. You can only be wisdom. You can know knowledge. I can sit here and tell you all about this or that if I've studied it and have recollected it and am able to reflect and articulate it. But I can't do the same thing with wisdom, at least with what I feel wisdom to be. I can't sit here and tell you about wisdom. I can't sit here and intellectually think of what would it be like to be wise. Okay, I'm going to be wise now. You can only be wise. And what does that look like? What does that look like to be wise? Well, it takes different forms. in all different people, you know? But there's certain qualities to it that run common between all the different, what you'd call wise people. And to me, what that looks like is connection to nature, connection to the natural unfolding of life itself, a trust, a confidence, a faith in reality as it is. And to tie back into what we were talking about earlier, in that faith, you have some power. You have power that you couldn't even imagine right now. When you are in that faith deep enough, you possess a power that if the power hungry people in this world found out about, they'd foam at the mouth with excitement. But notice how they are not the ones that possess that power. And it's the man off in the forest or at the top of the mountain in the cave, or the garbage guy or the janitor. It's these kinds of beings that possess that power. And notice how they aren't making big splashy ripple waves in the circumstances of life. You know, the stuff they're doing is very natural, very still, very simple, very quiet, very gentle. Helping someone, listening to someone, serving, seva in Hinduism. Being of service to humanity, being of service to your friends and your family, and even, yes, your enemies. Being a exemplar of love and kindness, you know? That's what wisdom is. Wisdom doesn't come in and make these huge, titanic changes in the way reality is, you know? Like when we protest for peace, that in itself is kind of a paradoxical thing to say. That's kind of a oxymoron, to protest for peace. You know, you show up to these peace rallies and everyone's like, we need peace, yeah, we need peace. Fuck you for not being peaceful. It doesn't make sense. You're not peaceful. You're not peaceful when you're being like that. Yes, your heart might be in the right spot, but your mind isn't centered. Your mind isn't aligned. You're not being wise. You're trying to be wise. You're trying to know what to do to make peace happen. You know? Look at my fucking hair. What is that? That's a weird ass silhouette I'm seeing. That's trippy. Our hearts can be in the right space. We want peace. But that doesn't mean throw bricks through people's windows that are what you think the block to peace is. Doesn't mean killing people in the name of peace. We kill people in the name of peace and God and harmony every day, you know? And that's a distortion. That's a distortion. It's not the way it is. Well, it's the way it is, but it's not a reflection of what I feel wisdom to be. Wisdom doesn't force itself down your throat, you know? Wisdom doesn't say, you need to change. Wisdom lets you do your dance and do what you need to do and try and achieve the desires that you think you need in order to be happy. And it waits. It waits silently with open arms, too. It's not holding you out. It's not like God has forsaken you, you know? It's waiting for you to let go of the mind games that you're playing in order to fall back into that place of natural, intrinsic wisdom in reality. You know, there was a period of time a few weeks ago that I was watching these debates, and that's really fun because I don't spend a lot of time watching debates. You know, I don't spend a lot of time consuming the information of opposing belief systems and stuff, you know. And in this case, the debates that I was watching was debates between atheists and people, spiritual people, religious people. And there's something I noticed about the atheists. This was it was actually quoted by Jordan Peterson, who was one of the debates that I was watching. He said the one thing he's noticed about all his debates with atheists is that it's not that they don't just simply and black and whitely disbelieve in God. It's almost like they're frustrated with God. The atheists always seem to have this common thing in them where they said, God, if you're real, come on in. I'm inviting you anytime, God. Where are you? Come on in, God. If you're real, show yourself. They're mad at God for not being there in the way that they think he would be if he were real. And the way I see it is it's just so far out. It's so far out. Like what I see is just, when I see these atheists on stage really talking up the legitimacy of their atheism and how there's no God and, they know what happens when they die and it's just black and nothing. And if God were real, they'd completely accept it. But right now there's no evidence proclaiming that he is. So they are just being realistic, according to them. I just see these, I don't know. They're allowed to think what they think, but they haven't seen it, man. They haven't seen God. No wonder they don't believe in him. They haven't seen it. And God isn't this old man with a big beard that'll rip through the seams of reality and say, I am here, my son. That's not God. That's an old medieval archetype of what we think spirit looks like, what we think God looks like. God is everything. God is everything. And it's a way in which we see. And in saying that, we are God. We are God. We are spirit. When the spirit is busy saying that it doesn't exist, who's going to tell it does? I liked what Jordan said in that it seems like these atheists are frustrated at God rather than obliquely disbelieving in God, It's not like there's a neutral objective disbelief that they hold. It may come off like that, but it's more so like they're like, come on, God, like I'd like for you to be real, but you're not appearing in the way that, in the model I have in my mind of what I think God is, It's far out. God is the very happening of the universe itself. That's what God is to me. It's this. And to know God isn't about doing something. It's about stopping doing something. It's about letting go, settling back into, quieting down the chatter of the mind. The chatter of the mind is the thing that thinks it knows what God is, and the thing that thinks there is no God, and the thing that plans, and the thing that wants, and the thing that desires and strives for and gets heartbroken and upset and all these things. The mind is like the toes of God. The mind is like it's like God's armpit hair or something. It's a facet of God. Had ye but faith, ye could move mountains. But if ye had faith, ye would see why the mountains are there in the first place, and not move them. We don't understand who we are. We don't understand why things are the way they are. So why are we trying to change reality when we don't understand why it is the way it is in the first place? We just show up and start bitching and moaning about how this sucks and it should be better, and if God were real, he should have done it this way, and you know what I mean? I've seen it myself. really close people in my life saying, if God was real, why did they let this person die from cancer? You know? I don't know. But that person dying from cancer doesn't mean God isn't real, you know? I think it's all necessary. It's all perfect. It's very hard to touch into that place, but it's a faith. It's like a featherbed, falling into a featherbed of every day, falling back into understanding that it's just the way it needs to be. And although my mind desires for it to be differently, I can see one layer behind that aspect of my mind is necessary. It's all functional in the unfolding of our lives, you know? So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I was on a walk and I thought of the had ye but faith thing, and just wanted to share my 2 cents on that. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and yeah, I'll see you guys later in the next one. See ya.